This is the guy that TSM is going to be looking at to do their heavy lifting. Heading into Champion Select for the second time today, though. We're going to see the band start off with Lulu and Ken, and TSM again showing respect towards that pick.
So it seems that the Gigabyte Marines are not changing anything up as of right now. Now that they've moved over to the blue side, they do have priority pick. They can get themselves an early powerful jungler should they want to, in the forms of Lee Sin or Elise rather, Levi, two of his strongest junglers. They too could also go for the Graves. This is a jungler that Levi is still very confident on, and he can still look to play that aggressive style, but TSM is saying, you know what, Levi? No. Nope. None of that today.
Graves is going to be taken off the board. TSM did not find success with it in game number 1. They don't want Levi finding success with it in game number 2, so you might as well just remove it from the picking pool. Shen taken out of the picture by the Gigabyte Marines so that they don't have that save potential to ruin their plans for those snowbally early plays. And Ivern will be their last ban.
So bear in mind that Gigabyte Marines are now guaranteed to either get themselves Elise or Lee Sin, two of Levi's strongest junglers, and I would not be surprised if they look to first rotate it. It is something that they have commonly done, and I feel like that it would make a lot of sense, especially with champions like Lulu and Ivern being taken off the board.
One ban left for TSM, and it will be the Rumble, preventing that one from going over to Stark. Now, do they go for the jungler? Do they go for that playmaker? Go ahead and just get Levi right where they need him, because both of those champions are up. They're only ever played as junglers, so even if TSM takes one, Levi could always take the other.
And bear in mind, Svenskeren, a lot of discussion has been around what is his strongest jungler, and people would argue that it is, in fact, that Lee Sin. So TSM, they could look to rotate something like their AD carry, given that the support has already been locked in, and then get themselves a Lee Sin followed up with that, which is a very common draft, which they have done multiple times, especially during the finals against Cloud.
And there you go, almost as if he knew what was going to happen ahead of time. Vedius with the predictions, the Ashe and Lee Sin both locked in for TSM.
So now, if you're the Gigabyte Marines, what you would expect is something like an Elise to come out from Levi. You have to pick it on this rotation, right? You can't afford to have it banned away, unless he feels confident enough that even with Elise and a Kha'Zix ban, he still has something left in the tank to bring out against Team Solomid.
Ooh, they lock in the Gragas for the second time. It did wonders for him in game number 1, so they're pretty confident in putting Stark back on that one here in game number 2.
And there's no reason why not to, right? Like, he had a great performance in game 1. It's a very safe, solid top laner. Nautilus had a few nerfs on recent patches, so it Gragas has now risen in priority, right? So I think that it's a perfectly fine, and I think that so far you've already got a pretty safe draft from the side of Gigabyte Marines.
Yep, can't argue with success, and might as well just go ahead and sing the same song again, as they are going to be putting Levi back on the Kha'Zix from game number 1, even with Elise still available.
Now I wonder whether or not TSM go for the Syndra here. Guarantee Bjergsen is on a powerful mid lane champion, and then they can look to ban away champions like the Fizz, like the Echo, force Optimus onto something like an Ari. Instead, no, they're just going to play it safe. They are just going to go for a little bit more of a meta standard comp where they just guarantee that tanky top laner.
Tanky AP top lane versus tanky AP top lane. Two big damage junglers. But the difference here in the first half of the draft is we've got the support and the AD carry picked on opposite sides, so bans might differ up a little bit. TSM going to start things off in the second banning phase by removing LeBlanc from the pool. Again, throwing some targeted attention towards Optimus.
Now Gigabyte Marines, they too can look to ban away some of the supports like they did in game before. Thresh and Nami seem to be the go-tos. We know that Biofrost did play a lot of Thresh during the regular season, and its playmaking potential against champions like Karma are also very good. I wonder whether or not Gigabyte Marines just go for exactly the same composition that they went for before. I mean, the Ziggs was perfectly fine during the laning phase. Sure, he struggled early on, but he was getting to a point where he was just going to become that pushing bot anyway, right? And a lot of those fights, he did a lot of work. So I wonder whether or not they will just stick to what they've already had work for them in game 1.
TSM decide to take Fizz out of the picture as their second and final ban of this second banning phase and overall draft. One more to go for the Gigabyte Marines. Will it be the Nami again? Do they want to keep focusing on the support role, or do they maybe want to throw one the way of Bjergsen? Looks like the choice is going to be the Nami yet again, just targeting what Biofrost can do there in the bottom lane. They know that last time things worked out pretty well for themselves. Turtle was not able to contribute in a meaningful way to TSM's game plan. He did have a couple really nice arrows, so that's one thing that TSM can always sort of bank on, is him being able to try to hit those and set things up. And considering they're going to have Bjergsen on the Syndra this game, that would explain the Fizz ban. That would explain why they wanted to set things up like that, so Bjergsen can play that and be that big damage threat.
Now, if the Gigabyte Marines had been the ones to lock in the Syndra, I would have expected something like a Vladimir to come out from Team Solomid, but I feel like that isn't necessarily an Optimus' champion pool. However, we know that as an individual, this guy has a pretty deep champion pool, and he's not afraid to bring out some new and fun picks like he has brought out the Fizz the last time into the Syndra matchup. That is large-wise banned away. I wonder if he is going to edge towards the Echo, which we've commonly seen, or whether or not he'll go more towards an Ahri, but he may even go to something like an AD within his own region. He has played a lot of Zed and Talon to a large amount of success.
I gave you credit for the prediction earlier, but the predict Zed locked in for Optimus up against Bjergsen Syndra. That's going to be a fun matchup to watch. I don't care who you are. Zed versus Syndra, you get to watch the outplay potential. This is going to be really cool.
Now, during the early laning phase, it is very rough for Zed.
Right.
However, once he hits the level 6 mark, the outplay potential becomes huge. You have to be very careful, because ideally you want to use your ultimate to dodge the ulti of Syndra. I mean, that is her highest damage dealing ability, but you can also use your shadows to be able to dodge a lot of her CCs and stuns, and with your natural mobility, you can dart and dance around a lot of her primary skill shots. And with her low mobility, she's also going to struggle to self-heal against the Zed in these later fights. But yet, remember that items like Zhonya's do make your life a living hell as an assassin.
A little bit difficult to get your damage done through that golden statue phase, but Biofrost will pick up that Braum for himself, the last pick on the side of TSM to go into this second game. And one thing I'm not expecting to see in this one, Vedius, is a level 1 attempt at the chicken game.
Yeah, I think that TSM will go a little bit more standard this time around. Now, the bottom lane of TSM, they don't have the same sort of pushing or threat that they had in the game before, but I think that the Braum makes more sense in terms of the overall composition. What Braum is really good at is his ability to disengage and his ability to peel. So when you have two low mobility carries, having this Braum is going to make Zed's life even harder when he wants to try and get onto the backline. You also have a Nautilus and a Lee Sin sitting on the front. So every time he tries to go in, he's just going to get knocked right back out again.
And it makes Kha'Zix's life that much harder too,
exactly.
Right? It's going to try to prevent Levi from becoming that monster that he was in game number 1, not allowing him to be that effective as the fights go on, reducing how well he can use those tools built into that assassin kit.
So the standard hashtags, I feel like the Gigabyte Marines may very well get a few more after that game 1
They had to have won themselves some fans with that game 1 performance, managing to take down a heavily favored opponent, one of the biggest League of Legends dynasties out there, and the Gigabyte Marines said, you know what? We don't care.
Yeah, and that's what I love about them. The fact that they didn't play scared. They didn't show TSM a large amount of respect. They took a lead and they went with it.
Yeah, they played against TSM the same way they were playing against the other teams in their group during the first week of the play-in stage. They just treated them like anybody else. You turn the nameplates off, and you're not up against Bjergsen, you're up against a Syndra. Just do the same thing you would do against any other Syndra. And now TSM invading through the bottom tri-brush. Not really gonna find a whole lot of success there. Instead, get 2 hits on a ward and eat some bombs for their trouble.
And the instant response from Levi too, gonna move in, get the deep vision around the Raptors so they can spot out where Svenskeren's looking to start his early jungle pathing. You would expect him to start in the top half of the map, given that early on, if you want to try and gank anywhere, it would very much be towards either the Syndra or down the bottom lane. But I feel like in terms of early ganking, we shouldn't see very much action. I feel like that for TSM, excuse me, they just need to play things cool, calm.
Slow and steady.
Yeah, they have a great scaling composition around the mid game. When they get the 2-item spike is really where their composition turns on. They can utilize the fact that they have a Syndra and Lee Sin as a roaming death squad because they're guaranteed to have push in the middle lane. We just don't want to see any aggressive, violent forces from the side of TSM because that is what cost them in game 1, and the Gigabyte Marines were very good at punishing those small mistakes.
Optimus just enjoying some of that level 1 Syndra action where the ranged auto attacks and the orbs together make your life pretty difficult.
Yeah. It really is it's a tough matchup early on for the Zed. Level 2, he's likely going to get his Shadow for a bit of extra range harass, but it's also his safety tool, right? So if an early gank does come in his way, he will have another means of being able to escape. You know, we actually see interesting pathing from Levi heading towards the bottom half of the map.
I was going to say, speaking of early gank potential, Levi now moving into enemy territory. Thinking about stealing away Svenskeren's blue, but Sven heading towards that now, might just discover him.
Levi still has his ward. Oh, he's just lying in wait. He's going for the cheese.
Svenskeren, though, going to spend some time at Wolves. So Levi says, all right, I don't care. I'm just going to start this up.
But this is really bad for Levi because now Svenskeren is going to be in a much better position. He's also level 3. Well, will he be able to clear it fast enough?
Levi needs to put in a little more work under this blue buff. Sven's going to be there in just a moment. Levi barely getting that one out.
He's looking for a trade too.
He wants to fight this. He doesn't care. Svenskeren now going back in with Resonating Strike. These two are going to be fighting to the death. Svenskeren taken low, barely getting himself away. The red buff is ticking. And first blood to the Gigabyte Marines jungler. 2 games in a row, Vedius. But TSM responds in force.
This time Bjergsen says, no, this is not happening again.
I will shut that down right now.
No, stop it, stop it. He gets himself the double buff. He gets himself the kill. And while they do lose first blood, the Gigabyte Marines, they just invested a little bit too much. The fact that Optimus could not collapse faster than Bjergsen is going to be massive for the mid lane matchup. But here we see Levi at this point, I feel should just disengage. He should just leave. He got the blue buff. He's happy. Both junglers choose to fight because Svenskeren knows that Biofrost is coming in, and with the exhaust, he's going to be able to win that matchup. But Levi feels confident because he has Archie and Slay following up from behind. The big turning point is the fact that Turtle's able to get there faster, but in particular, Bjergsen flashes over the wall with the level 3 as well. But now he has no flash.
Bjergsen has double buffs, though, but not for long. Levi comes back in, and Optimus is going to be given the kill. TSM's mid laner falls. Now Archie trying to get himself away from Svenskaren's counterattack. Jumping back over the wall with the safeguard. He had Biofrost waiting just so he had that escape route.
Buff transfer complete.
That was the entire plan.
It was all part of the plan.
It was all to get Optimus going. We talked about these two being how they win games. Well, give that Zed a double buff, and that's how you're going to find yourself winning a game a lot of the time.
But I love the fact that Levi comes back mid to punish the no-flash Bjergsen. I don't know how many times I've seen in the LCS, or in the European LCS in particular, where, like, a jungler will come mid early on, burn the flash, never come back again.
It's like, well, I did my job.
Yeah, he's just like, now the enemy mid laner has to play safe. But this time around, Bjergsen, he has the double buff, he knows he's pushing in mid, and then Levi, he just doesn't even clear any of his camps, he just makes the map moving around, and he's able to get the collapse down, and then Optimus, he just picks himself up the last hit, so now he will be able to get himself level 6 first. He has double buffs for himself, he has Ignite as well against a no-flash Syndra, so I would not be surprised to see a return gank coming out from Levi the moment that level 6 comes around.
Many plays to be made, and like we said about these guys, you know they're always going to be tracking those leveling spikes. Levi in some real trouble, though, going to be caught out and punished as Bjergsen grabs himself a kill. 3-2 now for TSM, 2-1 on Bjergsen. He's got 100% kill participation thus far. Now he's got himself a blue buff, too.
And now we're seeing a few mistakes from Levi where he's feeling a little bit too overconfident, trying to go for these invades without guaranteed push from both his top and his mid lane. The Star could only just return to lane. Optimus, he was not in a position to continue this push because even though he has a kill and he has a slight experience advantage over Bjergsen, that does not mean he suddenly now wins this match because he's going all in.
Bjergsen going to be jumped on by Optimus, who immediately bails himself away after getting shoved around. Deathmark not going to do nearly enough. Bjergsen doesn't even need to get himself all the way back. Instead, just going to go ahead, eat one of those biscuits and hang around.
Really subtle play there from Bjergsen as well. Note that the conventional path is you know where the Zed is going to land after his ultimate. He's always going to fall behind you, right? Which means that if you're Syndra, you just set up your stun to just hit behind you and land it onto Optimus underneath his turret. So Optimus immediately flashes so that he doesn't get stunned underneath the turret. But Bjergsen, he's patient with his stun, and he's then able to try and land it as Optimus is already underneath his turret, but in a different position. So small outplay,
tiny changes that you make to your game plan can make all the difference at this level of play. That's not exactly where he wanted to go.
Trying to give him a drink.
Yeah.
A little dehydrated there, Hauntzer.
Take a sip. But neither one of these two really in any supreme danger. A lot of Doran's rings between them, though.
Oh, yeah. Fellowship build coming into fruition right now. We're going to have all the Rings of Man at this point.
We're going to have something up there. These guys just making sure they're invested into that early game. 48 to 54 CS, both farming around the same rate as well. Biofrost in this bottom side river, laying down some vision, just roaming around a bit. Turtle's just cool hanging out underneath the turret. Keep in mind, WildTurtle does have that ultimate available. Enchanted Crystal Arrow can be used to set up those plays, but Mega Inferno Bomb also online for Slay. Remember what happened to WildTurtle in game number 1 when he didn't respect the burst power of the Marines bottom lane.
It's very true. It's very, very true. Now, Bjergsen with Sven is moving towards the top half of the map. Optimus is going to use this as an opportunity to try and push mid, but Starkey doesn't have mana. He does have flash, but no ulti.
This is going to be a very difficult situation to get away from with the 3-man collapse. Hauntzer needs to get himself away from the turret. He does so, and Svenskeren grabs the kill onto Stark, as now they'll put the pain onto the tier 1.
Clean dive from the side of TSM. They had river control. They knew that it would be too late for Stark to notice before they were able to get themselves the dive. And they should be able to get themselves the first tower of the game. Now, the Gigabyte Marines, they're trying to respond by getting themselves the Infernal Drake.
And they'll do so. But that turret First Blood will go the way of TSM. That's a nice chunk of gold going into their pockets, and they're 2K up.
Oh, for sure. I think TSM can be pretty happy with that. They can keep sending Hauntzer up top, but now he has a little bit more freedom to make more map movements, right? He has his TP coming up fairly soon. But notice how Gigabyte Marines are using this as an opportunity to get deep vision down the bottom half of the map. They want to try and make a play towards this tower, but Hauntzer's already making his way down there.
Levi trying to jump onto WildTurtle as Optimus makes his way into the fight. Death Mark is used. Mega Inferno Bomb comes in for the help. And you can see the shuriken on his head seals his fate. Biofrost is not there in time. And Levi, the blue buff bandit, I'm pretty sure he has stolen every single TSM blue buff this series. Manages to get that one as well as the kill, but Bjerg and Sven are here to try and avenge their fallen comrade. Heal used, flash as well. TSM not able to find anything.
So TSM made the correct decision in trying to respond to the collapse, because if Gigabyte Marines had stayed there trying to take that tower, it would have been a 4 versus 4 that Stark could not have joined. Bjergsen would have had everything available to him, whereas Optimus had just used his flash, or rather he just used his ultimate and he lost his flash earlier on in the play. So Gigabyte Marines forced to disengage, and TSM, they keep their turret alive down in the bottom lane.
Meanwhile, Hauntzer walks back up topside in just perfect timing to catch that entire wave. Turtle now hanging around mid lane, working on that Blade of the Ruined King. Morello Namicon will be the build for the Ziggs as per usual. Tracker's Knife with Warrior's Enchant done for both of these junglers. Tracker's Knife pretty much the staple of competitive League of Legends play, making sure you can get down more of those wards, keep more of an eye on your opponent. Especially for a team like Gigabyte Marines that likes to make these early plays, likes to get in the enemy's face, especially in their jungle. Wards are so big.
For sure. Now, if you are the Gigabyte Marines, the best case scenario for you is to actually get this bottom tower down as swiftly as you can, because then you can move the Ziggs and the Karma to the mid lane to start dealing with Bjergsen, and you can move Zed off to a side lane. The best scenario for an AD assassin is just to be free farming where there's no real threat. You can just go as Hauntzer goes.
Oh, that was very aggro. Now they're going in, looking to make even more happen if they can. Optimus goes down, and Bjergsen goes up to 3-1 and 2. TSM is not going to be waiting around this game. They will turn the Marines' own game plan against them.
The swift collapse coming in from Hauntzer, using his flash to lock down Optimus, and now they land a stun.
Now Stark, he's in trouble. Svenskeren able to go in, make the kick back. He dies for it. Mega Inferno Bomb comes in. Stark actually hasn't gone down yet. Biofrost in from behind, flashing forward, looking to make the move. Levi's gonna grab a double kill. Bio having to get himself away from that turret. Stark is still alive, Vedius.
But it ends up being a 2-for-2 overall. Svenskeren tries to set up the kick so the rest of his team can get the follow-up, but Stark, he's so tanky at this point in the game.
He's got 3 Dorian's rings and half of a hoodie.
And he's a fat man. This guy just doesn't take damage. It's insane. Bjergsen does a great job, though. He's able to pick himself a number of kills, 4, 1, and 2 right now. And we just see this happened the earlier pick, and I feel like you don't need to go for this kick hit. You end up trapping yourself underneath the turret against Levi, and also Bjergsen gets zoned out by the big ultimate there from Ziggs. The fact that Levi just goes in by himself, he knows he's gonna die, but he's like, you know what, I'm just gonna try and trade kills as much as I can. I have to get something back for my team. But wow, back and forth TSM, they're not able to get themselves that mid-tier 1, which really would have opened the map up, but now we see this shift. You can see Ziggs being forced to move into the middle lane. Zed, I expect him to be down the bottom half, and they're going to keep Gragas up top.
Optimus sitting on top of a ward that he's not 100% sure is there, but dropping the sweeper. Now he knows, getting himself away as Sven jumps in. Bio and Turtle will not collapse in time.
They have the range advantage. They're going to start putting some pressure down onto this tower. Speaking of pressure, Slay doing the exact same thing. He needs to be careful. They do have good vision around the river. But the possibility of a collapse is always prevalent, especially with Hauntzer having a TP advantage. Now, what I'd like to see from TSM is try and force a play knowing that Stark cannot join the fray. Notice how far pushed in he is in the top half of the map. They should look to try and get some vision so they can set up a flank around this mid-tier 1. As Sven finally gets himself a smite.
Sven smiting away that big chicken. As the TP comes in, TSM thinking about forcing something here. Hauntzer completes the teleport. Dredgeline not finding any sort of a mark, but Optimus goes down as he tries to make the play on the WildTurtle. Svenskeren not going to be taken low, but not going to be taken down. Hauntzer is a raid boss in the middle of 3 men. Does not matter. They are able to find one. Levi's going to be caught by the stun on the very edge. Now a little bit more damage to take him out, but the shutdown over for Slay onto Bjerg. 2 dead on TSM, but it's about to be 3 on the side of the Gigabyte Marines. Almost make it 4. Stark and Levi still might be looking to make some magic happen here. Levi so very low, but Stark wants more, goes right back into the fight. TSM will escape over to WildTurtle, who this entire time was working on that tier 1 turret, gets another objective for TSM. And they'll go up to an almost 3,000 gold lead after a bloody jungle fight.
So this time, TSM, they're in much more control over the game. They're winning far more of these fights. They just overcommit a little bit too often. So what we see is Optimus coming in from the flank. He wants to try and get the kill down onto WildTurtle. He feels that in this situation, he's able to get it with the heal, the exhaust, and the power of Braum. You're identifying why this pick was being brought out from TSM as an answer. Meanwhile, Hauntzer, he just 1v3 in the back of this fight. He knows that the rest of his team is looking to get the follow-up. And at this point, I feel TSM just needs to disengage. But Levi coming in with a very swift heal, along with the dangerous game passive to give him a bit of additional health, means that Gigabyte Marines are able to get a couple of kills. But TSM, they still have majority control. They get the mid-tower, they get the kills that they want, and they also have primary vision around this Mountain Dragon about to spawn.
Mountain Dragon spawning. TSM would love to get a piece of that. They have lost control over every Elemental Drake in the series so far. Svenskeren just going to go ahead and tag that one up with the Sonic Wave, see if anybody's hanging around. And now TSM will start this one up for themselves. Bjergsen 4-2-4. Very scary on this Syndra. Definitely the guy that you got to watch. Explosive Casket and Enchanted Arrow both going to be finding nothing. Turtle in some trouble, going to be taken very low. Optimus evading some trouble with that death mark as now he is down, but so is Sven. Gigabyte Marines trying to chase TSM away. Hauntzer tanking as long as he can. Going to be forced to flash, trying to escape. A nice Glacial Fissure as Gigabyte Marines stay a little bit too close, but Slay grabs the kill onto Biofrost. Levi over the wall, cuts Turtle down, and Bjergsen goes down as 2. TSM, 1 man left alive, and he is at blinking HP. The Marines will take the fight and earn the Drake.
And this time around, TSM, they were playing that fight so well, kiting back through their own jungle, utilizing the narrow choke point to land so much of the damage from Bjergsen, but then again, they just overstay a little bit too long. They do not expect the Gigabyte Marines to just continue with their fight. They stick on to TSM, they continue with the flanking, they realize that Slay has all this range damage that is continuously chipping down TSM, and they're able to win out. So you see the positioning from the Gigabyte Marines, and they're actually coming from all 3 sides. But here, TSM, they move backwards in towards the choker. Look at this great stun. Optimus is taken out of the fight, Archie is taken out of the fight, and Levi and Slay, they can't really get involved. And at this point, TSM, they just have to concede. They need to back away. They cannot stick around. But then you think, oh, actually, things are looking pretty good. They get Stark pretty low. But then here, WildTurtle overextends, allows Levi to get the kill. Bjergsen overextends, allow a 3 versus 1, while the rest of TSM are already looking to back away. And this is just another example of TSM overstaying their welcome and thinking that they can win these extended fights.
Levi 6-3-3, another good game for the star jungler of the Gigabyte Marines. We've been telling you guys the entire time, this is the guy to watch. He works well with Optimus, he works well with the rest of the team, just making plays, doing everything. And this is why the guy is just a monster. Hauntzer dropping the ulti onto Optimus, now looking to lock him down even further. Bjergsen wants the burst, but instead he's going to be bursted very low. Zhonya's Hourglass to keep himself alive. Optimus grabbing the kill with a well-placed shuriken. TSM loses one. Now Gigabyte Marines might lose their top laner in this bottom part of the map. Biofrost tanks up the turret long enough to make the play a success, and TSM will continue working on that tier 1. Meanwhile, Slade takes down the tier 1 on the opposite end. This game is just all over the place, Vedius. The Enchanted Crystal Arrow making its way up towards the mid lane, not going to be finding anything. Hauntzer, the target. Archie not going to drop to that turret. And Optimus gets himself killed number 4.
Gigabyte Marines are playing the map so much better than Team Solomid are right now. TSM invest 3 members down in the bottom half of the map trying to get themselves that turret. They don't realize that Slay, he's able to take 2 towers for himself in the top
big,
lane.
Man.
There was no one there to answer him. And the fact that Bjergsen and Hauntzer die to what is effectively Optimus baiting them in, saying, oh no, I'm overextended, I'm just a little assassin waiting to be hit. But then all of a sudden, Levi jumps over the wall. He gets the lockdown onto Bjergsen. They go for the dive onto the mid tower. And we're just seeing it time and time again. Gigabyte Marines are not afraid. This is a team that when they see a wall, they do not go around it. They do not climb over it. They charge head first, straight through it, and they are demolishing every resistance that TSM is trying to put up against them.
And Levi is the man with the sledgehammer, just taking this down brick by brick. You can see the gold differences that flashed up there on the bottom part of the scoreboard for a moment. Another massive lead over his counterpart in Svenskeren is why Levi is able to do these things. We've seen since Svenskeren tried to set up plays throughout this game, and a lot of them have gone awry. We haven't seen any of those huge successful kicks that Lee Sin is drafted for.
Now the gold is still even. TSM is still in a reasonable position. The issue that they have is that they're 1 turret down compared to the Gigabyte Marines. So that series of plays from the Gigabyte Marines has actually more equalized the game rather than giving them a significant lead. So now that TSM can recollect themselves, they can reset, and the Gigabyte Marines, they need to be careful not to overextend.
Oh, speaking of overextending, Stark trying to use the cast, but Svenskeren does a good job holding on to the resonating strike. Stark trying to get away, but it's not happening today. Svenskeren gets himself in there, finds kill number 3.
So this time, it is TSM that are able to punish the overextending Stark down in the bottom lane. They have the numbers advantage. They can start putting pressure down onto this tier 2 turret. And Gigabyte Marines, they're forced to not really have any answers. They've invested a lot of vision around the Baron area, which will be spawning soon. But this is a good setup from TSM.
Hauntzer continuing to push, Svenskeren with him. Of course, neither one of these two pushes exceptionally quickly, but the 2 of them together should be able to do a decent amount of damage as the Mega Inferno Bomb comes in to clear that wave away. Svenskeren eating a lot of damage from that turret as he makes his way out. That's the problem of losing all of your minion wave at once. But topside, Levi's knocking on the door to the base.
And we've got a TPM from Stark.
They're just trying to stop the backs, prevent anybody from interrupting Levi. Hauntzer gets himself over the wall. Optimus grabs a kill onto Sven. All right, that happened.
And now I wonder why Sven is even there. I feel like that we're a broken record here, Flowers. How many times have we said, Sven, like, can we calm down a little bit, please? Like, the inconsistent performances of the TSM jungler. Now Levi,
oh, no. Oh, invisibility right out of the brush. Looking to come back. Zhonya's Hourglass to keep himself safe, and Levi is forced to retreat as Turtle comes in at the clutch moment to make sure his mid laner does not die.
But look here in the bottom lane, Optimus, the pressure is on. Bjergsen's now going to be forced back. The Ashe arrow is unavailable for WildTurtle, and what was a good punish from TSM, they overstayed, they don't get anything off the back of it, and now they're the ones on the back end.
Thinking about making something else happen if they can. That's the Marines game plan all the time. Always look for more. They grab the tier 2 and they get out.
This is just such great play from the Gigabyte Marines. The fact that they have the Ziggs and they've made it work for a 2nd game in a row. The fact that Levi has been consistently performing. Now on the Kha'Zix. Like, originally he was well known for his Lee Sin and Elise, and he's like, yo, I'm going to add a bug to my repertoire. And
yeah.
Right now he is the bug in the behind of TSM as he is doing so much work in so many of these fights.
WildTurtle, again, this game, he's had some solid arrows.
Yep.
His positioning hasn't put him in as much trouble as it did in the last game.
Yep.
And the team's been doing a good job to help him try to peel that Zed off when Optimus jumps in, but he's going to have a lot of work to do to help TSM win as this game goes on. It's still a very close match, only about 1,500 gold separating the teams. Gigabyte Marines thinking about going in for this one. Levi is a miracle worker. Stark now into the fight. Optimus in the back line with him. Redemption going to be coming down. Stark goes low, gets bursted before he can be healed. A rampage, though, for Optimus. Can they make this fight turn into anything else? Slay going to be having a flash away. Optimus over the wall, wants to throw in the shadow. Bjergsen taken so low. The rockets nearly finishing him off. TSM trying to get themselves out of this one. Hauntzer, the only one with any sort of a measurable health bar left, jumps back in onto Levi, but now he's isolated and he is
Archie
down. TSM is going to be chased all the way. Bjergsen falls. Bio falls. Sven is going to be next as Levi continues to chase. He'll cut off the escape route as Optimus closes in.
Gigabyte, stop chasing up for the kill. Go get Baron. Go get an objective.
This is for glory, Vedius. He jumps over the wall and he's not going anywhere. Slay grabs the kill.
They don't get the ace, but that's only because WildTurtle just respawned and they should be able to get themselves the Baron. There is no jungler to contest them. Gigabyte Marines, these guys win another fight. They do it so well, and they don't lose a single member.
Synchronized backs, everybody getting ready to start the push-up yet again. Sterix Gage purchased now on that Kha'Zix.
Now bear in mind that this is another smite fight that Levi wins against Svenskeren. He does not get kicked back into the rest of his team, and then Stark goes in. He's the primary focus. Optimus does his job because he's able to get the kill onto WildTurtle. And this is where you think, oh, this is a little bit risky for the Gigabyte Marines. Why do you want to keep extending onto this fight? But just look at the poke constantly coming out from Slay and Archie. Optimus up on the flank just trying to do what he can. And the way in which the Gigabyte Marines just play this so slowly. They don't try too hard to force anything. TSM, they're always on the retreat and they don't have the mana or the health bars to really commit. So they run out of options and eventually it leads to their death.
TSM have now put themselves in a spot, now found themselves in a spot, I should say, where things are going to get very dicey very quickly off the back of just one or two more small mistakes. They've really got to play a sound game of League of Legends if they want to stabilize here and not allow the Gigabyte Marines to make an even greater advantage out of this. They're now up 5K in a game that was much closer. They've got 3 Drakes, 2 of which are Infernals, thus even multiplying the damage from the Ziggs and the Zed and the Kha'Zix that much further. This is a scary situation.
But let's not forget that we wanted to see a little bit more slow, calmer play, and that is not what we had at the beginning of this game.
Nope.
We had another level 3 skirmish in the enemy jungle. We had trades constantly back and forth, a number of ganks all across the map. TSM are not about playing this slow game, and I feel like that the Gigabyte Marines are just so much more adept at playing this fast-paced, reactive style that is working so beautifully for them.
This is like deja vu, Vedius. We underestimated Gigabyte Marines in week 1 of the play-ins, and now going into week number 2, everybody was like, yeah, it's going to be hard for them. TSM's the favorite team, and Gigabyte Marines is just stepping up. This team is just impressing and surprising and shattering expectations time and time and time again.
And it's not just the Optimus and Levi show, right? Sure, those two are having a great game, but look at Slay and his performance, the way in which Archie's constantly providing the utility for his team, and Stark, with all the plays being the frontline tank, this whole team is just performing spectacularly.
Which is exactly what you want to see from a team looking to prove itself on the international stage. As
and
Slay
as I say that,
hey man, he got out mechanics.
Yeah, he
Press
did.
R, win the game. Bjergsen takes him out.
It's one of the risks of playing Ziggs. He's a little short range, or he does have a lot of harassment and poke. When you get close to that tower, Bjergsen's eyeing you. He wants to see that opportunity, and he is able to find that pick. So this will stop now the pressure coming out from the Gigabyte Marines. They have been able to expose an inhibitor down bottom, but again, TSM won't lose too much off the back of that objective.
TSM get themselves some breathing room, some long-awaited breathing room against this Gigabyte Marines push. Now they've still got that for another 5 or 6 seconds or so. Down almost 7,000 gold. 1 inhibitor exposed, but none down. That's the big thing, too. The Baron push came, and now it's gone, and they didn't lose any inhibs. There's not that extra pressure.
Yeah, but the sieging power is still very strong with the Gigabyte Marines. All they need to do is send Optimus up onto a side lane, who at this point can 1v1 anyone. Bear in mind, he's got 2 levels on Bjergsen. He's got an entire level on Hauntzer. He's completed both the Black Lever and the Ghost Blade, working towards his Dusk Blade of Drakthar.
And such a sinister name for him.
I know, right? And when you're an 8-3 Z, that's even more sinister.
Yeah, the
right?
whole thing's just a sinister situation to have to deal with. The man is frightening, especially if you are WildTurtle. I mean, Bjergsen's at least got the Zhonya's Hourglass.
Yeah.
He's got a barrier. He's got tools to prevent this. But WildTurtle, you catch yourself anywhere near Optimus and Biofrost isn't sitting right there on top of you, you are dead.
Yeah, no Sash will save you now. You will not be able to remove that death mark. But he still has to get the damage down. It's all about Biofrost's exhaust. Now we actually see Stark posturing, well, back. He ends up getting hit in the face by a ball.
Yeah, good disengage from TSM, making sure that Stark isn't able to get in there, find an explosive task. Levi forced to jump back, Biofrost jumping in, TSM deciding this might be where they want to fight, but Bjergsen is down! That is not the way you want to make a fight happen. TSM gonna be jumped on. Optimus into the fight, WildTurtle taken low, Hauntzer on the back line, Redemption comes in, and Hauntzer will not find anything. Levi again gonna be occupying 3, and Gigabyte Marines take down 4.
Unbelievable teamfight win from the Gigabyte Marines. They get themselves 4 kills, and Captain Flowers, I think they're gonna take game 2.
Gigabyte Marines are looking to push this to match point against TSM in round 2 of the MSI play-ins. Biofrost will try to defend, but 1 versus 5 as Braum? I don't think so. 2-0, Gigabyte Marines.
What a game.
Listen to that crowd.
You know, like, at first, people are like, all right, TSM, they lose the first game, it happens. They were a little bit too overzealous. They tried to make too many plays happen, and fair play to the Gigabyte Marines, they punished very well.
Right.
Game 2, surely they'll reset, they'll cool down, they'll play a little bit more conservative style. But they still make a lot more skirmishes, but this time it definitely goes much more in the favor of TSM. They have more of the goal lead in the early game. They're setting up a lot of plays. They're the ones now punishing that of the Gigabyte Marines. But when it comes to these team fights, the way in which these guys coordinate, the way in which they execute is just so enjoyable to watch. And they seem to have TSM's number.
Yeah, every single time you're seeing Levi get so aggressive in this early game too. You talk about, oh, maybe TSM can take it slower and steadier. Maybe we can just tap the brakes a little bit, put on the cruise control, have a nice drive through the country. Not when Levi's in the car.
Levi.
That's not going to happen. No. The man is always looking to make the moves. And with the Gigabyte Marines now 2-0 over TSM, we're going to send things over to the desk to get their thoughts on that game.
Look, Flowers, I didn't think we'd be here. 2-0 up for Gigabyte Marines. I thought maybe they would take a game, I'll be honest. But they are absolutely dominating, and I think the first thing that we have to look at, gentlemen, is that draft phase coming through. Big changes here on the side of the Gigabyte Marines. In terms of that Zed in the mid lane, how did you feel about this one overall?
Both teams making some changes. You know, we talked a little bit about how flimsy on the one side for TSM were. They finally bring a few more tanks, and while that won't win the game for you, it certainly should, in theory, make a skirmish-focused GPL team in the Gigabyte Marines a little bit slower to snowball through. So I like the adjustments that TSM made, but they didn't really end up getting a lot of the engages in their favor.
Yeah, there were tank composition, more of a pick type of comp here with the Nautilus, Ashe, you know, lock people down with Lee Sin to kick them in, follow up, things like that. Standard TSM actually really did like their team composition. They were against a hard to execute, like one of the hardest to execute comps, no hard crowd control, all slows with like a Ziggs satchel in there, Gragas flash body slam, like not committal stuff or full committal stuff if they go in. Like they actually managed to execute on that though.
Which was absolutely crazy, because when we saw that Zed locked in, I know we were talking as a desk, like, if this guy doesn't get a bunch of kills in the early game, this is going to be a massive issue. This could be a big weakness. But the Zed, despite the fact that TSM found early leads, still found a way to get back into the game. And as we bring up our first replay, we can take a look at a dragon fight that really started to turn that in the favor of the Gigabyte Marines.
Exactly, and as we set up this fight, you can see how the Gigabyte Marines are closing in from multiple angles, and it at first starts looking okay, maybe that TSM can get out, but then so much damage gets put down right as Optimus goes into the fight, and it's very tough to deal with that Zed down.
And that's the thing, they actually bring them into a choke point, right? Like coming at multiple angles, bringing them towards the blue buff, forcing them to fight in this small area against the Ziggs, against the Kha'Zix that can jump on you. Gragas also excels in small places like this, and you would expect that when you look at TSM's team composition, they also want to fight in those small choke points. So they're happy going into that, being funneled into that area to hit the Syndra stun, the Lee Sin kick, things like this. But that all started as an afterthought. They were pushed into the choke point after the fight had already broken out. And that's why they're going to end up going down, because Gigabyte Marines' consistent damage was higher.
We can see TSM kind of heavy looks on their faces. Definitely has to be rough at this stage, adapting. Coming in game one, you go, hey, we can brush it off. You know, we played a little sloppy, we can clean it up going to game two. But even they did clean it up a little bit in the early game, and it was not enough. However, for me, looking back on that replay, it feels like Levi just completely dominating these fights. Whenever he is alive after the initial burst damage comes out, he just cleans up every time.
And a lot of that is the change that Zed kind of has in these fights is if he doesn't get exhausted, if he doesn't get locked down, he's a monster. So you have to deal with him from a mid lane perspective. Then Levi has damage on this Kha'Zix. Slay is putting out considerable amounts of AoE throughout the fight as well. So while you're dealing with the Zed, suddenly the rest of the team's dying to all of these other damage threats.
And it forces the Zonias out of the Syndra, so you can't go straight into the full damage route. It helps enough to keep you alive from one assassin, but there's so many of them coming at you. How do you actually Zonias out of a Kha'Zix burst?
It's good that you bring that up, because in our second replay, we see Bjergsen trying to Zonias one of these assassins, only to realize that there's going to be two jumping into the fray.
Yeah, suddenly, you know, too little too late when he does get to use the Zonias, dodging, honestly, a karma. But this is the thing, right? With two assassins there, the Zonias timing's impossible. There's nothing to keep him alive. And this is that big point in the game where the Gigabyte Marines actually utilize the last dragon fight to continue to break it open. They get structures after structures in the top lane throughout all of this, and their Ziggs composition actually found time to prosper and actually shine.
Yeah, we saw there, that's when the tower trade started happening. Once we finally saw a gold lead, admittedly, Gigabyte had taken some of the dragons in the early game, potentially something we could consider a lead, but as after that point, it felt like they were 100% in the driver's seat throughout the rest of the game.
Yeah, and I think fundamentally a lot of this is actually TSM committing to multiple places at once, right? They're being pulled apart on the map, and that's just the hard fast. We mentioned this nature with which the Vietnamese side actually carries themselves, but TSM are not responding by being five, even with their team composition. They're split all the time trying to match, and that's a big problem.
One thing to note is I think the vision control they had early on was better in game two. They certainly got the early game picks and skirmishes and control, and that was the TSM where we were like, okay, maybe this is them fighting back now in game two. They won't fall behind and then just lose the game after it. But TSM just kept overcommitting to some of these fights you're talking about where, like, realistically, if they can get out of that without taking a fight and just hold the game even, that Zed is slowly not really going to find those targets anymore.
Yeah, definitely. However, things continue to go wrong as we bring up our next replay, our Acer replay of this fantastic Dragonsteel coming in. It was the Baron in game one that was the nail in the coffin. This time around, it was Levi with this Dragonsteel into this extended fight that just did so much for the Gigabyte Marines.
You can make a montage play of Levi from this tournament alone on his steals and how smooth they've been, but it's, as you said, not only just a steal, it's then they clean up the entire fight from that. Like, Levi is buying enough time for the rest of the team. Again, Slay gets a good ultimate on multiple people, and it's an extended fight. This is where Optimus will have multiple rotations of the cooldown, and that's like a triple or a quadra kill in his mind waiting to happen, but it's patient from the Gigabyte Marines. They move in forward, Archie gets the speed up, and it's enough to take the rest of the fight. Like, this is Gigabyte Marines not just going super aggressive and running right into it, actually playing the fights out at the pace that they need to.
And that's something that you were talking about earlier, Rusty. This is kind of the pick composition on the side of TSM, kind of like that shotgun. They get one shot, they kill a couple people, that's the fight that they win. But when you get extended, it just feels like there's no way you're going to match the damage output of that Kha'Zix, of that Zed.
And you keep fighting the Gigabyte Marines inside the jungle. You keep playing the game of League of Legends at their pace, then you're playing in their ballpark and giving them too many opportunities to come back into games, with TSM having a gold lead in this one. Decent enough size, you would say, that they should have been able to push that, accelerate that, and close out the game. But then they kept fighting in the jungle. They kept giving these opportunities.
And I think that's the really interesting thing, is so much of the talk after game one was, oh, TSM won't lose a game if it's even. They won't lose a game if they're ahead. Well, they just did. So TSM clearly have a lot more issues than just a level one going awry, because they were playing right into the Gigabyte Marines for almost the last 20 minutes of that game.
It just feels like a little bit not coordinated on the side of TSM, and of course, as we look towards further in the game, it seems like it only gets harder from here. However, we're going to step away. When we return, we'll see if Gigabyte Marines can complete the sweep against TSM. Meet us back here for Game 3 after the break.